have missed you guys. It's been almost a month since we've had
Yeah,
a
it
session.
seems like it.
Yeah, it has been, I think.
Yeah.
Although tonight, even as we speak, our last show is finally playing. It took that long to get it out there. So, as far as the audience is concerned, we're up to date.
All right. Well, not to belabor, I mean, I want to go jump into some things before they go away in my head, but maybe we should put up an agenda. You guys, I guess, I don't know, have you guys thought about topics coming up, or do we have uh, anything that is in the horizon that I should investigate? I was, as you know, I was at the border, uh, and I got lots of juicy stories about that. But I I have I have kept track, actually, little of national news, because in Mexico you kind of get the Mexican news. You don't get the U.S.
Mm.
version very often unless you really seek it out. So
Yeah.
uh, I had skipped most of the U.S. side of things, and I had gone international. So if there's,
Yeah, I was
I don't
gone for
know.
a week and I did not even look at the news the entire week. So,
Okay.
I know nothing that's going on except the earthquake in Turkey, Syria.
Yeah.
I know about that. Doesn't really affect
Sweden
us
was part of
much.
the U.S.
Yeah.
There was one in Buffalo, I think, New York, something like that. A
Oh
I
yeah,
don't
small
that was another one.
know. Buffalo?
3 point
Yeah.
something rather. Yeah. Um,
That's an odd place for an earthquake to be.
it struck me as very odd. I didn't read much more beyond that it was in an odd place and it was a very fairly small one. So I don't know what it means. The world's falling apart, I guess.
Yeah. And I've just read that whatever the American Immigration Council puts out, which is helpful, but um,
Yeah, they're kind of policy slow. You know, their
yeah.
stuff is good. They're just not very up to. Sojourners, I think, is they seem to be one step ahead. Is is the way I feel with them. Uh,
Mm,
Yeah,
yeah.
so delayed answer to your question. I don't really have any topics off the top of my head. I was looking forward to hearing your stories from the border. I thought that would be really interesting to listen to, but
well, I can give you a quick report. You guys can weave in stuff that you've seen. I was in Mexico since the last week of January, and a 5 day turned into at least a 10 day, maybe closer to 2 weeks. But I started out, uh, well, Chicago ice slowed us down. I got to Monterrey too late, so I had to spend the night. Airlines cost. So I got a little bit of a story there the next morning because I could not land in the city of my choice. So either I had to wait 24 hours for the next plane there, or I could go to Juarez, Mexico, which is, the El Paso counterpart,
hmm
and then take a bus down to my city, which was nobody asks how these things happen, but I end up thus in a plane that was going to the border, uh, from a high traffic airport in Mexico. And one curious thing happened on that one was that uh, it's a Mexican airline. They announce everything in Spanish, and then they they do it in English, abbreviated, hard to understand, but it's still English. But I noticed 2 rows in front of me there was an African young man, probably in his 20s, uh, and he clearly did not understand either language.
Mm,
Uh, because he does what I do in those situations, which is you look around, see what other people are doing, and then that's what you do. But he wasn't processing the speaker up above him. And I particularly noticed it on the way down because this airline is very, very tough. People start getting up, they say, okay, we're stopping deboarding until everybody takes their seat because we off board by rows. So people have to sit back down, and when everybody's sitting down, then they continue. Uh, which, of course, anyone who was out of line, including this uh, gentleman, he saw that everybody was sitting down, so he took his little bag and put it on his lap and waited like everybody else. So that was my language signal. But then in this airline, you deboard front and back at the same time because you're not going into the tunnel things. It's good weather, right? So you just step down, go down the stairs, and then walk over to the terminal. Happened in Hawaii too. Uh, and so as we went down through the tail of the plane, because I'm a cheapie, uh, and we started heading towards the terminal, that's when I saw that there was another young man, same age, African looking, meaning not just in black, but they stand out. There's Northern Mexicans and then there's everybody else. And they were part of this everybody else, including me. But as we start heading inside the building, that's when I noticed that the line slows down because there is an officer checking for documents. Now, we're not crossing a border. We're not anything, but in Mexico, usually when you head towards the border, there's at least one checkpoint. And this was it for us. I happened to be up ahead because I was going to miss my connection. And I just went forward. He looked at me. He asked me for my documents. And while I searched for them, the only thing was a little corner of my passport that showed. And I was trying to tug it out. He said, just go ahead. And I saw him looking beyond me, behind me. And of course, that's where the two African young men were. The circumstance meant that I had to keep running. So I didn't see what happened to them, but I know they got caught. They got stopped. And at the time, I didn't see enough more until exactly a week later, I was sitting with a group of locals, and they started telling about their immigrant stories and how they just felt bad for the people coming through because they also notice what happens to migrants as they're going by. And in this one case, one of the ladies was saying she felt so bad because she had to take the bus from outside of Chihuahua, maybe like an hour, hour 30. And she ended up taking the bus, and the bus was full of immigrants from the South. And she said something unusual happened. The driver pulled over at a nonstop, and it was military checkpoint. Which he says, I've never seen one there, but the bus driver got out and he left, and then they asked everybody but children to step down off the bus. And that meant all the migrants. Because the way the bus system works, intercity, like everywhere, it starts out way south and it says it's going to the border. And along the line, it picks up anybody else that's also going to the border. But in this case, these people must be coming from deep down Mexico because everyone that gets on at the end, like us, we're like the last 3 hours. So we Chihuahua people always end up getting the leftover seats because the other people that have been on the bus longer have assigned seats from a full day of sitting there. So anyway, but she says that the bus driver pulled over, everybody was asked to get off. She left her son there, and then his son was hassled about documents, but he happened to have his school ID, and that was enough for them. But the other people did not, except for this fact that happened. Says that the boy, junior high kid, observed how so everybody that was on the bus, which was most everybody, had been immigrant. Their accent said as much. And there was a young woman up front who then, when they were asked about this, they all got unloaded, and the young woman turns to everybody and says, well, it looks like it's going to be 200 apiece. And now this lady overheard that and she realized what was happening. This young woman was the guide, if you will, and she had negotiated with the military uh, a total price. Then she divided by the number of people that were going to get through if they would pay their fine, their bribe, whatever you want to call it. 200 pesos, $10. But $10 times 30, you know, it's not a insignificant amount. So anyway, she saw how they all came back on, and by then it was, I mean, once you've lived in a bribing situation, you know how it goes down,
Mm.
right? Sometimes you hide the money that you give, and sometimes you get separated and you go around the building. By the time you come back, they got a smile on your face and you got a sad face because you've had to pay them off in order to go through.
Hmm.
And so anyway, she noticed the whole transaction. She felt indignant. As a Chihuahua person, she said, "How can it be that our people are taking advantage of these people that have been through who knows how much? And here it is, one last shakedown before they get to the border." And I felt helpless.
Mm.
I was a mom with a kid, bringing him to a baseball game, and if I say something, I'll get in trouble too. And what is my kid gonna do? You know, by himself if they take me. So
Wow.
she felt bad about them. There's another story that relates, but those were the salient ones in which I saw people coming up to the border and getting a shakedown, getting one more hurdle
Mm. Yeah.
to get to their destination at the border. So, so anyway, that was kind of sad. And what do you know? As the lady's telling me, I had picked up the newspaper that morning, and there was I won't forget it because it was so obvious. I didn't know one of the words of the headline. 167 uh, people were caught on a truck. What's it called? Those trucks that you use for cattle that have very high
Hmm.
uh, walls but an open top. That they'll
Mhm.
usually just put some kind of cover on it. But
Yeah.
yeah. So there was 167 people on one of those trucks. 157 of them were minors.
Wow.
Wow.
And they got caught near the border. You know, the trucker got pulled over, the trucker got taken to jail, the adults got taken by immigration, and the kids, all the minors. It was very clear that the newspaper, whether it was a bullet or an actual reporter investigating, uh, the kids, because they were minors, they could not be sent back to immigration. They got taken by social services
So this was on the U.S. side,
on the Mexican
on
side.
the Mexican side.
Mm.
Yeah, still on the Mexican side. Uh, they had mentioned a little bit about. I guess that last week was the week before was when, well, the Mexican president was meeting others, and there was a tail end report on the Mexican president meeting the American president, and
Mhm.
there was there was a little bit of calamity on the Mexican side because it looked again like our Mexican president was looked like he was uh, he had been encouraged to be with a U.S. policy,
Hmm.
you know, get along with what Biden had just announced, and everybody suspected that there had been a deal on the side, but of course, no one has it proven.
Hmm.
Uh, so those three things all happened, which generate conversation because I didn't know what the word in Spanish was for pack the sardines, but that's what the word said, but I'd never used that verb. And so when I saw it, I asked everybody around me, and two people gave me the wrong definition, then another person did it right. Anyway, that's one
Wow.
of my biggest complaints. When in Mexico, the newspaper is written like at a 10th grade level,
Hmm.
and my Spanish is still elementary school. It's very high end. I know all the Latin words, and then I know all the barrio Spanish. but my education has been in the U.S., and so high school and junior high were not my
Not in Spanish.
vocabulary acquisition phase.
Yeah.
So Google Translate says it's empacadores, no, empacados como sardinas.
Yes, but the word that they use, and I wrote it down for myself, is this. Oh, jeez. Oh, there on the
Halcinados?
chat.
Nados.
Alcinados.
Halcinados. Halcinados.
Alcinados. And so I didn't know what it meant. And somebody had thought that it meant that the word had been calcinados, which means they'd been burned, like burned to death. And I was like, no, they got taken to child services, so that can't be it.
Yeah. Halcinados.
Anyway,
I've
but
never seen that word
is
before.
to pack very tightly.
Packed very tightly.
Anyway, that's news from the underground or the over the ground. As far as regular people, I also got some very, very good education as to what the local, the biggest indigenous group, and their integration into city life. And they reminded me so much of the Canjobales here. Integrating them into school, but we don't understand them. You know, there's not enough interpreters. What happens when one of them comes to society and from their tradition, they can get beaten up. The women can get beaten up, but the regular Mexican system does not allow for a woman to be beaten up. And so I feel like it's happened here too more than once, that the immigrant male thinks that things will work out like they do back home, and then they get taken to jail because you're not supposed to beat up another human being.
Yeah.
Right. So that kind of stuff, and then the children and that kind of stuff. It was an interesting, but it was not necessarily an immigrant. It was a migrant kind of story. They're coming from the mountains to live in the cities.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a little bit of that.
So what is the largest indigenous group that you refer to?
In Chihuahua, we now use the correct name. It's called Raramuri. Raramuri.
Ramoni.
Yeah.
Ramoni.
We used to call them
Ramori. Ramori. Tarahumara.
Tarahumara is the mountains of Chihuahua and Sonora. One of those tribes that never got conquered because they live so much and deep in the mountains. So they've thrived. I mean, they're mountain people, and they don't. There's a lot of other groups, like another half dozen groups, but they were more desert people, and they got eaten up by the colony, by the conquest. But these guys worked. They would once in a while get really mad, and with the Apaches, they would kill off the Spanish mission. But the Raramuri, I noticed it in my generation. Like when we were kids, we never mingled with them, except when they came begging. And so I know 4 or 5 words. One of them is Korima, which means, well, now I know what it means, but at the time it felt like just give me money.
Yeah.
But Korima actually means everybody share and be in a happy place. Which it is true, right? When you're asking for money, that's essentially the goal.
The idea. Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, so I knew very few words, and now my cousins, my age, that grew up in that same kind of even non-mingling, we could say it. Now they're like so proud. They put the indigenous people as part of their icon, and there's all kinds of very good things. They got schools. Chihuahua built a whole new section of town so that the mountain people could arrive and they can have school in their language, and and all the social services can reach them. one of my cousins was very resentful. He says they get everything. They get food, they get school, they get all these services that the regular poor people don't get. Why do
Mm.
they get it? Of course, the other cousins that are more aware, especially the school teachers, they're like, you have no idea what they're coming from. And we're lucky to have them amongst us.
Mm.
And that's a change of attitude.
Yeah.
That's my generation appreciating the indigenous a lot more than than our parents or previous generations. Because I even asked my older relatives if they had been different. They said no, it was worse. You never mingled.
Mm.
Certainly, you wouldn't marry one, but you would. They stayed on their side of the line, and we didn't cross. They were workers at most. So.
Hmm.
So anyway, that's not a sad story to retell, but I am happy that things are changing, and even on my own, I once considered going back and working amongst the Indians 15 years ago, right before I came to Illinois, and then I had a powerful reason not to go, and that was Lisa. But the other one from my relatives and friends over there, they said, no, if you come to the mountains, you're the kind of rabble rouser who's going to end up being killed by the drug people. So
Mm.
don't come. And in fact, I again proposed the idea that when I finish here, that I should go over there. And they said, well, you'll still be killed.
Yes,
So,
still be killed.
so only come and go live in the mountains and go do those things you want to do when you've said goodbye to everybody.
Ah.
Because you won't last long up there. They will see you as a threat.
Oh boy, that's kind of
Yeah.
spooky.
Yeah, it's an unfortunate, but they are correct. I mean, that was like a unanimous vote all around every time I sounded. And all I wanted was, I want to go up to the mountains, go to the Continental Divide, and walk down the rivers down to the coast while I still can.
Mm-hmm.
You guys have done it here at the Forks here by Danville. You rent a canoe or a kayak
Yeah.
or the tube, and then you float down the river.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the rivers down deep in the mountains are not much bigger. So I figured, why not?
Yeah.
My great grandmother walked from the coast all the way up to where we settled.
Mm-hmm.
So why can't I take the trek back? And everybody was unanimous. Well, you can't do that because the best weather for growing crops is along the rivers, and guess where all the pot is grown, and guess where no one is supposed to go except the locals.
Ah.
So anyway, that
Not
was
even not even your politics or your social justice activities, but just your presence there would be.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see.
unwelcome.
Ah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
They used
So
to say that about a few parts of California. I can't remember now, like by Santa Cruz or something, where they grew a lot of pot. You had to be really careful.
I'll never forget. I was in a conference in Paris of Belgium, and there was this lady from Africa. I think it was Nigeria. She was very, very powerful voice, very deep, and she was like conviction driven about just how hard it was to be an immigrant. And she spelled out what would be right. And she said, the right to leave, the right for, she named several rights, but one of them was le droit de retourner.
The right to return.
To return. And that's one I don't have right now. I cannot return. And it may not be a government thing, but it is kind of, in that it's the drug people that control, and I don't have the right to return. Especially, I don't have the right to return. And this, I tried to do paperwork. I don't have my degrees recognized in Mexico right now. and I am missing one of the key numbers, and I got the runaround from 3 government offices. I can't register as a local because I don't have that number. And so now next time I will have one more paper to try to, because I want to return. I want to be able to return.
Yeah.
I'm not even planning necessarily, but I want to know. I would love very much to go back
Sure.
and be a local again.
Hmm.
But I don't have the droit de retourner.
Yeah. So what?
Yeah.
I don't know that much about it. I know that that is a problem for a lot of immigrants coming here, but I haven't heard too much about it going in the other direction of transferring degrees and professional qualifications and things like that. How is that decided? Is it decided by local institutions? They just decide what they will and will not accept, or is it a government to government thing, or how does that work, or do you know?
Well, they have rules. Like in this case, at the most basic, let's say you get your child, they started out elementary school, or they come here for 2 years and then they go back.
Mm-hmm.
Well, those 2 years, it used to be that they weren't recognized by the local school system.
Ah,
And over there, you have to show proof that you were in school for those 2 years. Otherwise, if you're up in 2nd grade and you return on 4th grade, but you can't prove that you were in school, recognized by their government, then you
Yeah.
go back to 2nd grade.
Hmm.
And they're tough. You got to show, like in my case, but it used to happen for the schools too. You have to show a birth certificate that has been printed in the last 3 months.
Hmm.
It's really stupid. Sometimes when you go apply for a job as an adult, you have to show your high school and your elementary certificates.
I
So
don't
now,
have
if you
any of
graduated
that
from
stuff.
university, what does it matter where you went to school?
Yeah. I
But
couldn't do any
anyway.
of that stuff. I don't have anything like that.
Yeah.
I have
We don't have the habit, but over there you do. You have to, and you plan on it.
Huh.
Have to have a birth certificate with you, a recent one, no matter where you go.
Huh. You know, I know the U.S. doesn't recognize a lot of degrees from a lot of places, and then other places that they do. And I don't know what the criteria are, but I didn't know that Mexico would also do it that way too.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, they don't recognize. I need what's called the cédula profesional. I need a sheet where essentially the government recognizes that I have finished the degree and that I am. It's not a tax ID, but it enables my tax. It enables me to be taxed as a professional when I work. That way, I could do independent work, for example.
Hmm.
I could not function like I function here by doing a 9-9.
Mm-hmm.
You know, be a W, use the right kind of W to earn my money and still have it be taxed at my level. It's anyway.
Hmm.
I will next time. I will be ready because I want to be registered and I want to be able to vote.